What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 338 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk to you about Batman: The Wrath. This collects Batman Special issue 1 from like 1984, and then Batman Chronicles issues 13 through 16 from the 2000s. And this is by Mike Barr, Tony Bedard, Michael Golden, and Rags Morales. And this collects, like I said, Batman Special issue 1 came right before Crisis on Infinite Earths, and that is the introduction of the Wrath, who is basically an anti-Batman. We find out that on the same night that the Waynes died in Crime Alley, on the other side of the city, we had this other couple. They died, and then their kid was also orphaned, much like Bruce Wayne, but he went down a different path, where Bruce Wayne became a tool for justice. This kid became a weapon against law enforcement, and that is the story of Batman Special Issue 1. It's the introduction of this brand new villain who seemingly we weren't ever going to see again. And then in Batman Chronicles, that was a series in the 2000s that kind of filled in different holes in Batman's early years. It would tell stories that happened sometime in the early days of Batman. We get a follow-up to the story of the Wrath, where we get to see a copycat Wrath who is taking up where his predecessor left off, and this time Batman has help from Nightwing in dealing with this enemy. And we also get to see a little bit of background on the character, because in Batman Special, we got to see a little bit of his background, but Batman and Jim Gordon had no idea who this guy was or why he was doing what he was doing. So in the follow-up story, they get to find out a little bit more about the Wrath and his motivations. And this is really good. I really like this book quite a bit. The Wrath might be one of my favorite Batman characters right now, and it is a shame that we have not seen more stories featuring this character. I know in the New 52 they reintroduced the Wrath. Personally, I didn't really care for his costume. I'm not going to say that this costume is just absolutely fantastic, but I like this better than the Iron Man-esque suit of armor that he had in the New 52. I think that you could do something a little closer to this. Maybe not make it purple. I think the purple kind of, in my mind, immediately makes it feel a little bit silly. But I really love this character. I really love the idea behind this character. I'm going to go ahead and spoil a tiny thing for the Batman Chronicles part of this book. But we find out that Jim Gordon is actually the one who orphaned this kid. And that is a brilliant idea. It's a really excellent way of putting this kid on the opposite end of Batman. He still trains his body and mind to become a very effective fighter and a very effective thinker, but he's not fighting on the same side as Batman. In the Batman Special issue, Batman refers to this essay that he read once called The Player on the Other Side, and that's what he refers to the Wrath as, because he never says at any point, I am the Wrath and I am your enemy. He doesn't do anything like that. So Batman is just talking to Alfred, and he calls him the Player on the Other Side. But making Jim Gordon be the target of the Wrath is a really inspired choice. What I love about this is that if Batman had been in Egypt fighting Ra's al Ghul, and then this guy was targeting Jim Gordon, he wouldn't necessarily have any reason to go after Batman. The only reason that he is coming to blows with Batman is because Batman's trying to save Gordon's life. But this is one of those examples where the villain doesn't actually have a beef with Batman. A lot of times you will see, especially, it feels like especially in superhero movies, where the supervillain has some kind of beef with the superhero, but it feels very forced. It doesn't feel like it really needs to be there. For example, in Batman Forever, the Riddler has a beef with Bruce Wayne, but doesn't really care about Batman, but then he goes and allies himself with Two-Face, who does have a beef with Batman, and it doesn't feel like Riddler would really need to be allied with Two-Face since he doesn't care about Batman. This does not do that. Seemingly, he would have no reason to go after Batman at all. At one point, it does say that he's going after agents of law enforcement, so maybe he would have gone after Batman eventually, but he's telling his girlfriend that once he goes after Gordon and once he completes this part of his goal, he's done with this life. Now, we know that he's just as obsessed as Batman is. At one point, Batman says he's as obsessed as I am. So would he have hung up the cowl after he assassinated Gordon if he had succeeded? I don't think he would have. I think he would have found a reason to keep going, but I really love the way that this character is handled, and unfortunately, it ends in the only way that this kind of character could have gone. It doesn't really leave a lot of open ends. I'm trying not to spoil how this one particular part of the story ends, but it's a little difficult to talk about it without talking about the way it ends. But it's one of those characters who you want to see more of in the Batman world, but you can't have this character existing permanently. Because they are so good, there has to be some kind of end for this character. The same with General Zod. General Zod is a very interesting character who has an interesting connection to Superman, but he can't just be hanging out on Earth biting his move. Because he's so powerful, he pretty much has to meet his end in the story that you use him in. Kind of the same thing with the Wrath. Because he is as skilled and as powerful as Batman, he kind of has to be dealt with in the story that introduces him, which I imagine is why we haven't seen a lot of this character before. I know he showed up in an episode of The Batman. I haven't seen that episode, but now that I've read the comic that introduced this character, I am much more interested in seeing that episode. I'm surprised we haven't seen this character in the Gotham TV show. That would be a perfect place to use a character like this, although if it was me, I would have had the character introduced in like season 1, have Gordon accidentally orphan his orphan the kid, and then bring him back a few years later where he's trained a little bit, but now they probably aren't going to do that. But anyway, I really love this book. This is some really excellent Batman stuff, a little bit of it from the mid-80s and then a little bit from the 2000s. So if you are interested in some of the lesser-known Batman villains, I would highly recommend checking out The Wrath. Even if you're not, even if you just like Batman stories and for some reason you haven't read this, definitely check this out. I think it is very much worth your time. One of the better Batman stories that I've read. So those are my thoughts on Batman The Wrath. I hope that you guys liked this video, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back tomorrow with a different video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.